All right, we're going to get started. In order to start deploying things to AWS, we first need an AWS account. I tried first recording these videos on my AWS account that I use for the Coding with Callie website, but I feel like I already have too many things set up. Thought it would just be cleaner to start from the very beginning. So if you've never used AWS before, we're going to figure it out together. Okay. So I created a codingwithcallie@gmail.com email address so that way we can sign up for AWS. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and type in codingwithcallie@gmail.com, and the AWS account name will name Coding with Callie. Let's go ahead and verify the email address. So enter it below to confirm your email. So I'm going to go ahead and move this up here to my other monitor so that way I can open my email and verify it. All right, perfect. Now I need to enter a password for the root user. Okay. And then I need to confirm the root user. All right. So I'm going to type in my password now. Let's just do a suggest a strong password. And you know what? We should not do that because now I'm showing you my password on my browser. So I'm going to pause, enter my password, a new one that you did not see, and then play again. 1 sec. All right, so once you enter and then confirm your password, you can continue on with the sign up. So I'm just going to say that I'm using this for personal, and then I'm going to put in my name and my info here. Say I've read the agreement. Sure. And then I need to put in my credit card information. So if you use the free tier, you won't end up necessarily spending money, but for AWS, you need to have a credit card or debit card on file from the very jump. So I'm going to pause this video once again to do that, and then I'll see you once I click this verify and continue button. All right, so now after we put in our credit card information, we're going to have to get a text message to verify. So onto my phone number, don't spam me. All right, I'm never good at these games, but we'll give it a try. Sometimes I'm like, am I? Oh, didn't get that right. Do I need to add spaces? Nope. Might have to pause on this part too. All right, there we go. And so now I'm going to be texted a security code. See how we did. There we go, and continue. And now we need to sign up for our support plan. We're just going to do the basic support plan for free and complete sign up. So yay, now we have an AWS account. All right, now that we have an account, we can set up our user. Our user is going to have admin access. All right, so we're going to go ahead and click sign into the console. And because we don't have the IAM user yet, we can't click on this button and sign in with that user. Instead, we're going to sign in as root user. But it's best practice to always use an IAM user, especially if you're working on a development team. All right, so we'll sign in with our email address and our password, and you will see that we are navigated to our console home. All right, we're going to use the IAM Identity Center to set up our admin user and group and role and all of that jazz. Okay, the way to enable that is through IAM. I already enabled mine, but it's pretty easy. Just select the recommended settings, and I will try not to play around with my account without being on video in the future so you don't have anything to set up without watching me. So we're going to go to the IAM Identity Center. All right, mine's enabled, so it already went there. If it didn't, it would say something like enable, and then it would have a recommended setting, and then it would take you here. Okay. We are then going to navigate to users, and then we're going to select add user. All right, we're going to type in a username. So I'm going to make the username Callie Stosecup because that's me. All right, and then I'm going to send an email to the user with the password setup instructions. Okay, then I'm going to enter in my coding with callie@gmail.com email, and my coding with callie@gmail.com email to confirm. My first name is Callie, my last name is Stosecup, and my display name is going to be Callie Stosecup. All right, then we are going to click Next. All right, so we need to create a group. This is going to be the group that's going to have the admin privileges, and then we will add our user to this group. Why are we doing this? Well, if we're just going to give the permission specifically to Callie Stosecup, then anytime we have a new dev join our team, we would have to go through all of the same steps to give them the access. If we have a group instead, then we just add a user to the group. Okay? So we're going to click on Create Group, and a new tab is going to open. And then we are going to add a group name. Let's add something like, oh, perfect, admin team. I've done this before. And then we are going to click Create Group. All right, so now I can go ahead and close out of this tab. All right, and I'm going to click Refresh here, and Refresh is now going to find me my group. So I can add my user, Callie Stosecup, to this group by clicking this box, check, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Next. All right. So this looks good. I'm reviewing and adding my user, and I'm adding them to the admin team group, and I'm going to click Add User. All right, so Callie Stosecup was added, and then now it's saying I should receive an email with the instructions on how to set up my password. So I am going to pause this video here, and I'm going to wait for my email to come, and then I will resume filming once I see that email. All right, I got an email. The subject is invitation to join AWS IAM Identity Center. All right, and then if you open the email, you see a button that says accept invitation. So I went ahead and clicked that, and that opened up this page where I'm going to add a new password for Callie Stosecup. I'm not going to add that on this video, but I'm going to add it right now. And sorry, I'm using Google to create my password for me. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm doing that right. Okay, perfect. I typed in my password and I went ahead and saved my password. And now it is redirecting me to sign in. So let me pull this down. And Callie's Toast Cup is my username. My password is popping up. And then I'm going to click sign in. All right. And now it's asking us to do multi-factor authentication. So I'm going to do, let me look. I'm going to do Authenticator app because I have one of those already on my phone, and click next. All right, so now I'm going to use an Authenticator app to keep setting this up. So I am using the Google Authenticator. So what's going to happen, and see it says either install Google Authenticator Duo Mobile or Authy app. So I'm using Google Authenticator. All right, it's just an app that I downloaded from the App Store on my iPhone. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the QR code. All right, and then I'm going to scan it on my phone, and then it's going to give me a authenticator code to type in. I don't really know what the rules are in terms of if I'm supposed to show you that or not, so I'm just going to pull it to another window, but that is what I'm doing. I'm on Google Authenticator. I'm scanning the QR code. All right. Now I have a code that popped up on my phone, and I'm going to enter the code in. Oh, and I was too slow. Typing it in now. All right. And then when you do that, let me pull this back down now for you to see. You'll see this successfully registered. You can now use it, and we're going to say done. All right. Perfect. Okay. So then I am going to go ahead and cross out of there. All right, so now we have our user and we have our group. The next thing that we need to do is we need to add our administrative permissions. Okay, so we are going to find where permissions are at. And if you look over here, this is kind of where in AWS you can find a lot of the navigation on the left-hand side. So we are going to go to multi-account permissions. All right, and then we are going to choose AWS accounts. All right. And a new page opened. Oops. Sorry, you can see. I actually don't know what you can see or not. All right, a new page opened, and we have this structure here. And it displays our hierarchy, right? So we have our root is coding with Callie, and that is the management account. All right. So then we are going to click on this assign users or groups to this account. We're going to click on it first. All right. And then we are going to click the admin team, and then we are going to click next. All right. And now we have permission sets. So we're going to need to create a permission set. All right. And it's going to open up in a new tab. All right. And now we have the permission set. We're going to keep the predefined permission set because why create something new if we're already good? And we're going to keep this administrator access. All right. Then we're going to create next. So this is going to, just for make sure everybody understands, administrator access is going to be full access to all services and resources. But you can see that there's a lot of other different types of access that you could create. Okay. And so you'll see when you're working at different companies too that you might not get administrative access. You probably won't. You're going to get what you need in order to do your work. Okay. Next. All right. So now we have our administrator access name here. I'm going to just leave that there. And let's see, I think session duration 1 hour is good. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then I'm going to click create. All right, cool. So now the next thing that we need to do is close this tab, and we can go back over here. You can see that we are waiting on permission sets, but we don't have any. So let's go ahead and refresh this, and you can see that now we do have a permission set. All right, so we're going to check this one that we just created, and we're going to click next. All right, so our user group that we're adding the permission set to is admin team, which if we go and look at it, you will see that Callie Stowe's Cup is on that team within that group. Okay, and so now we can click submit. All right, so now we have provisioned your AWS account successfully and applied the updated permission set to the account. To sign into our administrator account, we can go ahead and choose this bottom link in the email that we were sent in our invitation to join AWS IAM Identity Center. So I am going to go ahead and click on it. And what it's going to do is it's going to start the login process for me. Then I can go ahead and click my account that I want to log into, and I'm trying to log in with administrator access. So I'm going to click on that, and now it's signing me in. It also might ask you to do the multi-factor authentication. I just did that recently, so that's probably why it's not asking me to do so. So that is going to be how you can log in, and then you can go ahead and see that this is the user that we are logged in under, and you can have access to everything. So let's just kind of walk around what we are doing on the AWS console to try to learn a little bit of way around. So there's different services that we have in AWS. Okay, so you can see your billing and costs, an S3 bucket, EC2, ECR, EKS, and we're going to go over a lot of these things. So in Deploy and Public Challenge, we're going to use EC2 a lot. That's going to be our virtual machines that are hosted in the cloud, and that's going to run our applications, and it's also going to serve as allowing us access to certain things and allowing us to view different, through load balancing, view our applications. All right, we have Elastic Container Registry, which is what we're going to use. It's going to be a private registry, similar to the Docker registry, but when you push to Docker's registry, it's public to everybody. So this is a way to store our container images privately. We might use S3. I'm not sure though. Probably not. EKS is going to be our managed Kubernetes system. So AWS will manage all of our pods and the control plane for us. So we just have to worry about deploying them. Okay. We'll use IAM. I'm not sure if we're going to get to domains or not, but we might use Route 53 as well. Okay, but basically each one of these is a different service that you can go into, and then there's a bunch of different resources and options within each service. All right, so kind of take a look around AWS. If you see a service that you've never heard before, do some Googling, read the documentation, watch some YouTube videos, try to get familiar. The ones that you are going to be most familiar with this time around is we are going to be looking into VPC. So VPC, subnets, route tables, internet gateway, elastic IPs, and NAT gateways are all going to be something that's going to be heavily used in the next 2 assignments. So those would be good ones to watch. Look more into Google and watch videos about. All right. We'll get started in the next video with our very first assignment. All right. The first thing that we are going to do to complete this assignment is create our VPC, which is our virtual private cloud. All right. So what you want to think about is when you are deploying your application, okay, the cloud is really just computers that are somewhere else. Okay. So you're putting your application on a computer somewhere else, and you want to make sure that other applications and other devices cannot connect to your application that you don't want. Okay. So you need to fully understand how networking works on AWS. And the first place we're going to start is with the VPC. Okay. So the VPC is going to be one of the services that AWS offers. So here is VPC. When you get a new account, you have a default VPC that already exists. Okay, so we can take a look at it, and you'll see in your VPC, you'll see subnets, all right, route tables and network connections. Okay, but this is just going to be the default options. Now, I deployed several apps before I looked into what VPC meant and what I'm doing with them. But this is going to really help you understand how your application communicates within itself and how you can communicate with it from the internet and so on. And the way that you're going to understand that is by going through and manually creating all of these things and making sure you understand the options that you're putting. All right. So we are going to start by clicking Create VPC. All right. Now, if you click on info here, you can always read more about the option that you're selecting. So here we need to create whether we want to create a VPC only or create the VPC, subnets, NAT gateways, and endpoints. All right. Now, when you are first doing this and you're trying to understand, do as much of it manually as you can. Okay, that's going to help you. So we're going to go with VPC only, so that way we're setting up every piece of the puzzle. All right, so I'm going to call this deploy in public -VPC. All right, I'm going to go ahead and leave this CIDR block as the IPv4 CIDR manual input. And again, if you want to go ahead and read more about it, you can read. And there's also documentation that you can click on and go out to. Okay, I am going to go ahead and use the CIDR block that they recommended. All right, and that is going to be 10.0.0.0/24. All right, Now, we will have some other resources about CIDR blocks and what those mean and stuff like that. But for this video, all you need to know is that this block here that we're using, all right, is going to support 256 IP addresses, which should be more than enough for the application that we're going to be deploying and what we're going to be doing with it. So you can change what you write here to allow for more IP addresses, less, and so on. This is fine. This is what we're going to use. Okay. We're not going to use IPv6 right now. All right. I'm going to leave the tenacity to default, and I'm fine with the tags just being name and then our name. All right. So then all you need to do is go ahead and create the VPC. All right. So the VPC is going to just be your private cloud that you have and you only have access to. Okay. And within that cloud, okay, you can't get into it, you can't get out of it unless you configure those things. Within the VPC, you have subnets. Okay. So that's the next thing that we're going to do is creating our subnet, and we will create that in the next video. All right. The next thing that we're going to do now that we have our VPC up is we're going to go ahead and create some subnets. I think a picture is very helpful, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the docs about subnet CIDR blocks. Okay, because when I was creating my subnets and practicing before this video, I wasn't really sure what to put for the subnet CIDR blocks. Okay, so this documentation was really helpful, and I'll make sure it's linked in this lesson. But I like the picture especially because it kind of shows you. So this is our VPC, right? And you can see this box, and it's a solid green border. Nothing can go in and nothing can go out unless you let it, okay? And when I say unless you let it, I mean you have to create a resource on AWS that does that. And there's lots of them, and we're going to go through them, okay? But just think that is your cloud. It's yours only. No one can get in, no one can get out, okay? Then within this VPC, what we're going to do is we're going to create subnets, okay? So subnets are going to divide the IP addresses that we have available. So we have 256 IP addresses in the entire VPC, all right? So we're going to break that into two subnets, right? Each supporting 128 IP addresses, right? So one of them is going to have this range here, 10.0.0.0/25, which is going to be this range of IP addresses. And the other one's going to be 10.0.0.128/25, which is going to support these 128 IP addresses. Okay. Why do we have two different subnets? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to make a private subnet and a public subnet. So anything within the public subnet, we are going to set up that it can connect to the public internet. And we're going to use an internet gateway to do that. For the private subnet, all right, let's just say subnet A is our private subnet, nothing will be allowed to get in and out, all right? And we're going to have to be kind of sneaky and tricky with how we access the internet from within the subnet, all right? And access the application within the subnet from the internet. All right, because we're keeping it private and locked down because we don't want other people, bad actors, to be able to communicate with our application directly. Okay. This will make more sense as we go. So if it's a little bit foggy, that's okay. The best thing to remember right now is that we made ourselves a private cloud. All right. And now we're breaking that cloud into two subnets with different IP addresses. So that way we can kind of have some IP addresses that are public and some that are private. All right, so to create that, we're going to go to our subnets page. You'll see that we already have 6 subnets. That's just in our default VPC. You can filter your VPC. So I'm going to filter so that way I'm looking only at my deploy in public VPC. And then I'm going to click Create Subnet. All right. The first thing you do is select the VPC, which is going to be our deploy in public VPC. All right. You can see that this is our CIDR block associated with that VPC, and then we need to name it. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say deploy on public, and then I'm going to say public subnet. All right. Availability zone. I'm going to click US East 1A. Now, we are creating a VPC that is just in one region. All right. So the subnet and both of our subnets will be in the same region. All right. If you have like a super like scaling app, lots of users, if you want to make sure you have no downtime or as little downtime as possible, you're going to want to have multiple availability zones, because if one availability zone crashes, you want traffic to go to the other. But for this assignment, I want to just keep it simple. We're creating this all manually. I don't want to have a million subnets. So we're just going to do 2 subnets, and we're going to do them in the same availability zone. Okay. So this is the CIDR block for the VPC. So then we need to select what CIDR block do we want for this specific subnet. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy the ones that are advised to us by AWS to split them just in half. Okay, so you can see that it's popping up. This is going to equate to 128 IP addresses. An IP address, for example, when we deploy our application, we'll use an EC2 instance. That's an IP address. Okay, so you can see we don't need that many for such a small application and small purposes as this assignment. All right, keeping the name as the only tag is fine. We're going to add another subnet. This is going to be subnet 2. We're going to call it deploy in public private subnet. And we'll select the same availability zone because it doesn't matter for our purposes since we're not actually going to have users. And then we'll select the other CIDR block that's going to be the other 128 IP addresses in that VPC. Okay. And then we can create subnet. Now, before I click create subnet, I want to point out that we didn't actually, the only thing that is saying that this is private or this is public is the name, okay? That's not actually doing anything. This was something that was really confusing to me when I first started learning about this, was like, why are people naming it public or private? But like, where am I actually clicking public or private? They're both private right now until we set up gateways and until we make them not and change things up, okay? You're creating the subnet, and then you have to add resources onto your setup to make internet traffic go in or out. Okay. So, anywho, but having the subnet name, public or private, will help you with associating all of those resources and will help you when you're deploying your application. So, we're going to create our subnet, and you can see it's creating both. Okay. All right. So, that is going to be how you create a subnet. In our case, a public subnet and a private subnet, but they're not really public. Neither of them are public at this point. They're both private. So right now, this is the picture that we have. We have our VPC, and then within it, we have 2 subnets, and they're both locked down, even though we're saying one is public. But next, we'll start looking into how to make one of them actually public. See you in the next video. Okay, next up, we are going to create an internet gateway. All right, so let's go ahead and head over to internet gateways. Okay, you can see that we don't have anything within our VPC, but we do have an internet gateway within the default VPC. So you can see that all we have in terms of details is that we have this internet gateway and it's associated with a VPC. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. We're going to create internet gateway. All right. And here you can read a little bit about internet gateway. An internet gateway enables communication between your VPC and the internet. After you create the internet gateway, attach it to your VPC and specify it as a target in your subnet route table for internet routable. Okay. What does that mean? We have a few different pieces of the puzzle here. The first piece is the VPC, which we've already created. Right now, the VPC is that green box. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out. Well, we want to put a little doorway, or rather, a little gateway to the internet that's connected to the VPC. So on that little box, we're going to have a doorway that leads out and in. Okay? That's what we're doing here. We're creating that gateway so that way we can have internet traffic enter and exit our VPC. All right. And then we'll do some more other magic afterwards. But let's go ahead and do it. So we're going to say deploy in public, internet gateway. All right, and create. Easy enough. The next thing that we're going to do then is we're going to go to this actions here, and you can also see that it's up here. It doesn't really matter where we click it. We could click it here or here, but we're going to attach it to a VPC, and we're going to attach it to our deploy in public VPC and attach. All right, so now our VPC has a way to get out and in. Okay, but if we think about what we've created so far. We created the VPC, and then within the VPC, we created our subnets, right? We named one public, but it's not actually public. It's just named public, okay? We are then going to put our application within the subnet. So if the subnet is private, even if there's a gateway out to the internet through the VPC, that doesn't really help us unless our subnet has the ability to route traffic in and out through that internet gateway. Okay, so that's where we're going to move to next. We're going to move to route tables. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this filter for the deploy in public VPC, so that way we can look at the default route table. All right, and then you can look, it has two routes. Okay, so all of these zeros just means all traffic. Okay, so all traffic to the internet gateway that we have to and from, okay, is going to be allowed on this route, okay? And then we also have this here, which is just the default, which is saying that traffic locally within the VPC is allowed. So that means if I have an application if I have a front end in my VPC and a back end in my VPC, that the front end and back end, since they're both in the VPC, can talk to each other, even if they're in different subnets. That's just part of the rules, okay? But this internet gateway is saying that in this route table, okay, and if you look then at subnet associations, you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these subnets are able to use this route table, okay, that we have access to the internet. What does this also mean, though? This also means, though, that the default VPC that Amazon is making for you, because if you look in the default VPC, let me go ahead and get rid of this. If you look at this, all of these then have access to that route table, and that route table is then allowing network connections. Okay, so if you're just using the VPC, you actually have all public subnets, and they all allow communication with the internet. So what we want to do is we want to create a route table, and we want to create that specifically for our public, associate it specifically with our public subnet. So that way we can communicate with the internet from the public subnet, but we still have a private one that can't communicate with the internet. Okay, so we're going to say public route table, and I forgot the naming convention of deploy in public that I've been using. Then I'm going to click this VPC is the VPC that we're going to use for this route table, and that tag is fine. And then we're going to click create route table. The next thing that we need to do is we need to associate with a subnet. So we're going to edit subnet associations. There's two that are in this VPC. So we're going to go ahead and click deploy in public. Public subnet is the one that we want to associate this route table with. Okay. And so far you can see that all we have is that, do you see this 10.0.0.0.24? Right? That's the CIDR block for our VPC, right? So we're saying that within the VPC, everything can talk to each other. Okay. That's not super helpful for us because this is our public route table. So we need to edit our routes and add one. We're going to add one, and we are going to say that everywhere, right? And then can communicate with an internet gateway, and we're going to communicate with that internet gateway that we just created, and then we're going to say save. Okay, so now we have it set up that this route table allows us to communicate from the subnet to the internet and from the internet to our subnet. All right, we will continue on in the next video, but this was creating a public route table and an internet gateway. All right, before we make our other route tables and some of the other kind of resources that we are going to need for the application and to complete this challenge, I want to show you what we just did realistically. Okay, so currently we have, I'm going to filter by VPC. All right, so you can see that we have, do I need to refresh? Bum, bum, bum. Filter by, I guess it's not gonna, I thought it would tell me. But anyway, so I'm gonna go to my subnets and I have my public and my private. And then if we look at my public one, you can see that it has this route table associated with it, which allows local traffic. And then it also can communicate with the internet gateway, all right, which the internet gateway allows us to connect to the internet, which it's a gateway to the internet. Makes sense, right? So what I want to do now is I want to test out my subnets, right? So right now I have a private subnet that has no route table to an internet gateway. So it's just local traffic, and that's just kind of what, if a subnet's in a VPC, it can communicate with other things in that VPC. That's a default, okay? And then we have our public that has access to the internet. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to go to EC2 now. Now EC2, as you can see by this little description, is a virtual server in the cloud. So the way I think about an EC2 is essentially just it's a computer that is not near you. Right now, my computer's right in front of me. I can type my code. I can see everything. I can go through my files, right? An EC2 instance is the same thing. It's just a computer in the cloud, okay? And the cloud doesn't actually exist. The cloud is just another location. It's a computer somewhere that you can't see. And so in order to communicate with that computer, and in order to like change things on that computer, you need to put a little bit more work into it. You can't just open up the computer screen and get going. All right. So in order to launch an EC2 instance, what we need to do is we need to click this first, go to EC2 dashboard. Then we need to click this on instances, click launch instance. All right. So we're going to name it, and this is going to be on our public subnet. So what we're going to call this then is, you know what we can do? We can just call it public. Let's say call it deploy in public, public EC2 to keep with our naming. I'm going to keep that it's just going to be an Amazon Linux. That's going to be like the type of virtual machine that we're doing. There's a ton of different AMIs that you can use, Amazon machine images. Feel free to research more about it, but for our purposes here, we're just going to use the default Amazon Linux. And then I'm going to keep it at T2 micro because it's free tier eligible and it's pretty tiny. But as you open it up, you can see that there's a bunch of different options. You can see that like T2 Nano, for example, costs less per hour than T2 Micro. So you want to look into all of those different things. I don't think it's free tier eligible though, but that part's up to you to look up. We'll keep it there. The next thing you want to do is select a key pair. Now, this is a new AWS instance account, so I don't have a key pair. Now, what is a key pair? So we can click on this info and read the description here. So you use a key pair to securely connect to your instance, all right? What does that mean? So like I was talking about a few minutes ago, where I said that when you want to work on your computer, you just open up your computer, type in your password, log in, go, you have access to all of your files, okay? When you're working with a computer in the cloud, all right, you need to have that login capability as well. And the key pair is how we're going to do that. All right. You can go ahead and read the documentation more on key pairs if you want to know more about it. But we're going to go ahead and click the create new key pair. I'm going to leave it the way that it is. And then I'm going to create a name, which I'm going to say EC2. Let's do deploy in public key pair. All right. And then I'm going to click create key pair. All right. And then it's going to download this key pair here to my computer. All right. Excuse me. And then that is how I'm going to connect to my instance, which if that doesn't make sense, that's fine. we will look at in a second. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is it automatically sets up in for the network settings that it's going to be within the default virtual private cloud. We want to change that. Okay. We don't want it in the default. We want it in our deploy in public VPC that we set up. Okay. And then we want it to be in one of our two network or subnets. We're going to use our deploy in public subnet. All right. The next part that we're going to do here, and remember, this subnet, all right, is associated with the route table, which has the connection to the VPC with the internet gateway, right? So we are able to communicate with the internet if we are within the public subnet. If I selected the private subnet, we would not be able to. So keep that in mind. All right. Auto assign public IP. So we want to have a public IP so that way we can access our application that we put on this computer in the cloud. We want to be able to access it and publicly through the internet. So we will go ahead and enable the auto assign of a public IP address. You can assign it afterwards, but you'll have to manually go do it. So I'm going to go ahead and just say enable it. All right. We'll create the security group. I'm going to say deploy in public. Public EC2. Is that what I named it? Yeah. So we're going to say public security group. Okay. I'm going to keep I like to just duplicate the name into the description. So we'll do that. And then now we want to think about our inbound security group rules. So inbound security group, what does that mean? That means what are the rules for the traffic that you are going to allow to come into your EC2 instance? Okay. What do you want your EC2 instance to be able to receive? Okay. So I need to be able to SSH into this instance. What does that mean? That is how I would open up the computer screen, type in my password, which is essentially the key pair part of things. And then I'm now in the computer and I can look at the files, I can change things, I can update things, I can download things, I can do all the things on that computer. SSHing into it is a way to get into the computer, okay? And that is going to just, the defaults is that's a TCP protocol and that's on port 22. All right, so source type is asking where do I want to be able to SSH from, okay? So you need to think about it this way. Do I want anyone to be able to SSH into this EC2 instance? If you're working on a team, maybe yes. If you're working from different computers, maybe you want all of those computers to be able to. But for me, I don't need it to be anywhere, okay? I just need from my IP address, from my computer where I'm at now, I need to be able to SSH into this instance. So I can go ahead and say the same thing, SSH for admin desktop. Okay. So that is going to be my inbound security group. Okay. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. All right. We also need to be able to have traffic come in from the outside too. But I think we're not going to do anything else in terms of security groups right now because I'm not super clear as to how I want to word that rule and what I need to do. So I'm going to see what I can do first with the way it is set up and then edit from there. Okay. One instance is fine. The rest of this is fine. So then I'm going to click launch instance. All right. So now we have successfully initiated launch of instance. And so you can click here to go to it, or you can go back to your EC2. So if I go to EC2, you can see that I have instances. This is filtering for running. So that means it's still pending state. And I can go ahead and refresh until it gets to the point where it is public. All right. So now it is running. Okay. So this is how we're going to connect now. So connect, this button here gives you all the options for how you can connect, okay? We already set up that we can SSH into the instance, okay? So I'm going to select SSH client, which should be the automatic. Then I'm going to open up a terminal. Okay, so I have my terminal here. And then I'm going to, uh, first I'm going to run this command to make sure my key is not publicly viewable. I think since this is the first time I'm using this key, it is in my downloads folder. So you need to also be in the same folder that you downloaded your key to. So I'm going to go into CD downloads. I hope that's the right thing. And then I should be able to see how that worked now. So before, when I ran this command, it said that it didn't exist. And then I CD'd into my downloads folder. CD means change directory. So I want to change the directory to downloads. You can see that it then moved me into the downloads folder. And then I ran the command and it worked. All right, the next thing I can do is then copy this, which is the actual command to SSH into my instance using this key pair, and then click enter. When you load this the first time, it's going to ask you this question. Go ahead and click yes. And then if you see this cute little bird, you know that you are now into your instance. Another way you know is that now on your terminal, you see this. Okay. So yay. We were able to SSH into our instance. Why were we allowed to do that? Well, we were allowed to do that because of our security group, okay? Our security group for inbound allows us to do that, okay? Let's now, we are going to look at the same idea, but now we're going to look at it from our another instance. We're going to do a private instance, okay? All right. So we're going to call this deploy in public private EC2. And we still have work to do on the public EC2, but I want to kind of show the comparisons because the point of this is to understand how the networking works. Okay, so we're not done with the EC2 instance. I just want to show how you can SSH into one, but not the other, and why. Okay. So we'll keep the Amazon Linux, T2 Micro. I'm going to go ahead and just use the same key pair. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so it says, let's go. We have to change our subnets to the deploy in public VPC, and then we need to change it to the private subnet. The private subnet does not connect to through the internet gateway, so we won't be able to access it publicly. So we also don't need to have a public IP address. All right. And then in terms of security group, we should not be able to SSH into our instance because it's in a private subnet. So even if we say, so let's go ahead and just say we should be able to SSH in from my IP address, that's not going to work. And let's go ahead and verify that and take a look. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and click on the instance, and it is pending. So we'll wait a second. It's taking a little bit of time to load. All right, now it's running. So let's go ahead and try to connect to it. So if you want to get out of your instance, you can go ahead and just type in exit, and you will. Let's paste in this. And you can see how the bird is not loading, and it's just sitting here and thinking and like spinning its wheels. If we just keep sitting here, it'll eventually time out because why? We are in a private subnet. no traffic can go into our private subnet or out of our private subnet. Now, you might be wondering, well, Callie, what's the point of a private subnet? Well, we will see in the next week's assignment what's going on. Now, we're not done with this assignment, but in the next video, we will go ahead and configure our public EC2 instance to be able to show the NGINX server homepage. All right. We could wait for this to go out, but it's not working. I'll go ahead and pause the recording and I'll come back when it shows that it's not working and show you. All right, it took about another 30 seconds, but here you can see that we have port 22 SSHing into port 22 to that host, operation timed out. Okay, and it's because we are not able to SSH into anything in a private subnet. That internet gateway is necessary for this part of things in order to SSH from outside of the VPC into the VPC. Okay? All right, I'll see you in the next one. All right. Now that we have our EC2 instances, all right, we have our private EC2 that we cannot SSH into, which was the goal for now. And then we have a public EC2 instance that we can SSH into, well, we're not done with because we just SSH'd into it. We didn't do anything with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the instructions. So first I'm going to open up the instance, then I'm going to go to connect, and then I'm going to go to my SSH client, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this example command. And then I'm going to paste it in. And now I am logged into my virtual machine. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is I want to install NGINX onto my EC2 instance. NGINX is a server, okay? So there's lots of things that you can do with NGINX, okay? Pretty much the point of it for this deploy in public workshop is going to be we're using it as a reverse proxy server, which means that when we load the public URL for the public IP address for this instance, we want to redirect traffic eventually to our application that's running in a private subnet on a private instance, okay? For this exercise, though, we just want to load the public IP address and we want to see the NGINX server homepage. So when NGINX is running and you hit it, you ping the server, you see their welcome to NGINX homepage, and that's the goal of this exercise right here, okay? By the end of this video, we hope that we can see the welcome to NGINX homepage, all right? So what do we need to do? We are in an Amazon Linux machine. All right, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to install NGINX. So we are going to type in sudo yum install NGINX. All right. Now it's going ahead and it's saying it went to the internet and it's getting all of this and it's saying, is it okay if I download all of this? This is the same thing as you going and finding something on the internet and being like, oh, I would love to download that application to my computer and then clicking download. Okay, we're just doing this on a virtual machine. We're on a computer is somewhere else away from us. We logged into it with our key pair, SSHing into it, and now we are downloading an application onto it. We're downloading NGINX. And now we have that our download is complete. Okay, so all we did was install some software on a computer. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is sudo systemctl, and then we're going to say start, not start NGINX. Okay. So that was a good message in that there was no message. No sign is a good sign. Okay. Sudo is going to be like advanced privileges. So that's going to allow us to do more because we're going to be using it as the root user versus just typing the command. So if you ever get unauthorized, try to throw sudo in there and it will hopefully work. All right, so now we have installed NGINX. Okay, what we want to do here is we want to hit that NGINX endpoint, right? We want to ping that server and we want to see what happens if we get a response. The way that we can do that from within our virtual machine is the same way that you would load an application that you just coded on your personal laptop. You would go and you would type in localhost in your browser at whatever the port is and then click it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say curl localhost and then enter. And what that is going to do is it's going to send a request to localhost. And what's running on localhost? Well, our NGINX server is. And you can see that what comes back is an HTML page. And that HTML page is saying, welcome to NGINX. So we successfully downloaded NGINX to a virtual machine. We started the server and we were able to make a request to it and see the homepage. But that's not all we want to do, right? Because the whole point of deploying something is that we don't want to use localhost. We want to take an application that's on our personal computer and we want to put it on the internet. We want to be able to access it from a different computer somewhere else. All we did here was access our application locally on a virtual computer. So I guess it's a step forward, but we're not done yet. Okay, so what we need to do then is we need to go back to our instance. You can see this is our public instance. And then now, do you remember when we had that enabled the public IP address? Well, here it is. So we're going to copy the public IP address and we're going to go and we're going to go put it in our browser. And as you can see, this is not looking great. It's just spinning, okay? And why is it spinning? You have to, when something's not working in deployment, it's just not as simple as like, let's throw a console login and see what happens, right? You have to really think through like, what is the computer trying to do right now? So we are trying to communicate from the public internet to our virtual machine, all right? So that would be an inbound traffic. So where did we look at inbound traffic before? Well, we created a rule for inbound traffic in our security group. When you look, the only inbound rule that we have and that we're allowing is that we can SSH at port 22, all right? And that's from specifically my computer. So this isn't going to work because this isn't SSHing from my personal computer into the virtual machine. So we're going to need to edit our security group. So I'm going to click on the security group, and then I should be able to edit inbound rules. And then I'm going to add a rule, and I want to be able to do HTTP traffic. Port 80 is perfect. All right, so this finished site cannot be reached. Okay, and still trying. All right. And we can do anywhere. We could do from specifically my IP address. I'm going to go ahead and say anywhere because we want this available publicly on the internet. But you can definitely wrap this up and make a bunch of different rules, and that would be really cool to kind of dig into. So we're going to save it. All right. And now that we saved it, we should be able to hopefully, yeah. And did you see? And now we loaded our Welcome to NGINX homepage. All right. So at this point, we have successfully deployed an application to the cloud using AWS. All right. I'll see you in the next video. All right. So we can see this welcome to NGINX when we load our public IP address, okay, for our public EC2 instance. However, that's not really what we want to be doing completely. What we want to do is we want to have our application, the one that we're actually viewing, we want to have that in the private EC2 instance. And we want to use the public EC2 instance. Instead of seeing this NGINX homepage, we want to use the NGINX as a reverse proxy server and redirect the traffic to our public instance. The reason why we want to do that is because instances within a VPC can talk to each other freely, right? So if we go back to our VPC, we can read more about that. Deploy in public VPC. Okay, and then if you go to route tables, you're going to have our public route table, and you can see that local traffic is part of the public route table. And if you noticed, we have our default route table that is for everything in the VPC, and you can see that local traffic within the VPC is allowed. So our public instance can communicate with our private instance. So eventually the goal is to have NGINX redirect to serving what is in the private instance, the application that's in there. However, we're not quite ready to do that because there's nothing in our private instance. And as we saw in the last video, we can't even SSH into the private instance in order to install something, because remember, SSH is like opening your computer and being able to log in, and then you look at the files, download, and do things. Okay, so there's still some work to be done. So how do you get into a private EC2 instance if it's in a private subnet? Well, that's where we use a bastion host. So a bastion host is going to be another instance, another EC2 instance. And the bastion host, the whole point of it, so we're going to say DIP, so deploy in public, bastion host. The whole point of the bastion host is just to forward traffic, allow us into our private instance. So we're going to SSH into our bastion host, okay, which is going to be a little computer, and then we're SSH from our bastion host into our private instance. And why can we do that? Because the bastion host will be in the VPC, the private instance will be in the VPC, and two instances within the same VPC can talk to each other automatically. I hope that makes sense. Okay. If it doesn't, Google bastion host, start looking into some of the resources that I've tagged. Okay. So we can use Amazon Linux again. We can keep this as T2 micro. For our key pair, I'm going to go ahead and use the same key pair. All right. And then we're going to create our security group. So our bastion host, the only point of the bastion host is that we can SSH into it. Okay. So we want to allow traffic. Okay. SSH traffic. And then we want to allow it from our IP address. Okay. I'm trying to look because I feel like, so I want to edit the VPC. I always forget that part. So we're doing our deploy in public VPC. We will need a public IP address for the bastion host. And then we're going to create a security group, and we are going to call it bastion host security group. And let's call it like deploy in public bastion host security group. Let's copy this security group name and let's paste it into the description too. And we want to be able to SSH into, because it's an inbound security group rule, from my IP address. And we'll add the rule SSH for admin desktop. Okay. The rest should be fine. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the instance. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and open our instance, and you can see it's pending, so we can refresh until it goes. So let's look at it. We have a public IP address, which is good. And let's go make sure our security is good. And yep, we have an inbound rule that we can SSH into it. And then we have the outbound rule that we can, from our bastion host, go anywhere. Okay. Which is nice because we want to be able to do that. All right, let's refresh and see if we can connect, and we can. So we're going to go ahead to the SSH instance here, and we are going to copy this command. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out of that. And then I'm going to, I don't know why it adds some of these extra things sometimes. Okay. And then I'm going to click yes. And we are able to see our bastion host instance. Okay. And that is because it is in our public subnet. So let's go look at the networking tab. Make sure, yep, it's in our public subnet in our DIP VPC. And because it's in the public subnet, then it's connected to that route table, which is connected to the internet gateway and so on. Okay. So we are into our bastion host. All right. So what we want to do then is from our bastion host, we want to be able to get to our SSH into our private EC2 instance. Okay. Because ultimately that's where we want our application to live. And we need a way to be on that computer in order to download our application, download NGINX, and put our application there. Okay. Now we need to do something a little bit different in order to get there. We need to be able to we need to be able to save our bastion, our key pair. Okay, we need to be able to save it so that way our computer knows it and we can go ahead and instead do SSH and then without doing the -I and the key pair. And the reason why we want to be able to do that is because the key pair is saved. Remember, it's in our downloads folder on our personal computer. Okay, so when I SSH into my bastion host, I'm now on a different computer. So I'm not in my downloads folder anymore. So if I were to try to, so let's actually just go and do this. Whenever you're in doubt of like, do I understand something? Actually try to do it and see if it makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. But do you see how it's saying like it's going to go get that key pair? So if I bring this up and it says key pair not accessible. Okay, so what you want to do instead is you want to be able to SSH into it without that, okay? Which we're not going to be able to because we didn't do it right? But the way that we are going to do that is we're going to get rid of the key pair here. We're going to do dash and then a capital A, right? And that is going to allow us to SSH into our bastion host, maybe. All right, so let's go ahead and look this up. So we want to do SSH into, I already Googled this. All right, let's see if this article is going to tell us how to do it. All right. Yeah, and this kind of shows you it, right? So we have our SSH key on our internet or on our computer, and then we go through our internet gateway, all right, to our EC2 instance with a public IP address using that public IP address because that's what that is, right? And then we are going to, and that's in our public subnet. And then we want to SSH from this instance into our private instance, okay? So this article, which I'll post for us, let me go ahead and bookmark this so I can remember to post it for you guys. Okay, so here we are going to run this command. So first we want to do SSH -add, then -k, and then we want to do DPI dash, say to save it, yeah. And then let's see. The -k and A flags are deprecated and been replaced by that. It says identity added though. Okay, so now let's try to SSH into our bastion host without the key pair because this should have configured the SSH agent on our computer. And woohoo, we're into our bastion host, okay, without having to add that key pair because it set it up. Okay, so what we need to do though is we need to actually add this -A here, okay? So that way then we can use agent forwarding, okay? So I'm gonna exit out of my bastion host because actually, again, if you're not sure if something will work, then you're going to want to go ahead and, okay, so this is, let's make sure this is my private. So this is my private instance. So let's go to connect. Let's copy the example. Let's paste it in there. And then we're going to delete the key pair because that doesn't exist. And you can see now it's thinking and it's not going to work. Okay. If it's taking too long, it's not going to work. But what we want to do is we want to use this -A so that way we can make it work. Okay. Mm. All right. So now we do -A. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's going into our, I'm getting all my instances confused. So let's go back now. Let's go to the right instance, which is our bastion host. Let's go to connect. Okay. And then we want to SSH into this guy here. All right. So we can say SSH-A and the bastion host. Oh, and see, I'm already in an EC2 instance here. Which one am I in though? Okay, let's just start from the beginning. SSH-A. So let's start from before we do our -A to verify that we understand how this is going. Okay, so this is our bastion host. Okay, we have SSH'd into it. All right. Now, from our bastion host, we are going to try to SSH into our private instance. Because we didn't use that -A, we are investigating whether or not it's going to work. Okay, if we need that -A or not. Okay, so then now I should be able to, well, I shouldn't be able to, but I'm going to try SSH. Then this is my private instance. And perfect, it's not working. Okay, so now I'm going to exit out of the bastion host. That's been closed. I'm going to clear my terminal. And I'm going to go back to where my bastion host was, and that's the correct IP address for it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the -A. And now we are into the bastion host, but using the -A. So hopefully that means then that now we are able to SSH into our private instance. And we cannot, and you know what? I already figured out why. Okay, so we need to go look at the private instance and our security rules, okay? So if we go and look at security, we are looking at inbound security rules. Okay, so if you look, it's saying that we can go into this instance from our IP address on port 22 and we can SSH into it. But that's not what we're doing. We are SSHing from our bastion host, not from our IP address. So, of course, it's not going to work. So, what we need to do is we need to go to that security group and we need to edit the inbound rules. So we want to be able to SSH, all right, but we don't want it to be able to SSH into anything. We want to be able to SSH. Oh, okay, I think I need to delete this. So add a rule. We want to be able to SSH, and the source is custom, and then from the security group, from the bastion host security group, is that the one that I clicked? Yes. Okay, and then we're going to save the rules. Okay, so now that's been modified. So if I go back to my terminal and I try again, yay, it works. Okay, so now let's exit out of this. So that we're in the private instance. Now we're in the bastion host. So then I'm going to exit out of that. Okay, and then I'm going to clear my terminal. And then I'm going to try to get back into my bastion host and try this all again, but without the flag. So we can prove whether or not we need the flag. And then I'm going to go back to my private instance, and then I'm going to go to my connect, and I'm going to copy. So that way I can SSH or try to into my private, and you can see that it's permission denied. And this is what you should see, right? It's saying that the key is not, we can't use this key. It's not going to work because we didn't use that -A. All right. And we have this -A. So let's go ahead then, and we want to look into SSH-A. What does that mean? Let's maybe SSH-A. Mm, mm, mm. All right, I don't see something super clear, so I'll try to find a better explanation of it. But basically, it's going to allow us to SSH into our private instance from our Bastion instance with that -A. I'll try to find a resource and post it on this page once I have that. So now we can exit back out, and then we can go ahead and SSA into our Bastion host, and then SSH into our private instance. And yay, we're in our private instance. And you can tell because this is EC2 user with that IP address. And if you look at our private instance, that's the same one. Okay, this was a great next step. This is how you would set up your Bastion host. So to clarify, our private EC2 instance is within a private subnet. You cannot connect to it from the internet. You cannot connect to the internet from it. It is locked down. Our public EC2 instance is in a public subnet. The public subnet is connected to a route table and internet gateway, and it can connect to the internet through the internet gateway, and the internet can connect to it through the internet gateway. The Bastion host. The Bastion host only has one inbound security rule, and that is that we can SSH into it from our IP address. All right. When we SSH into it using the -A flag, then we SSH into it, and we're able to then from there SSH into our private EC2 instance. Okay. Next, we are going to go over how to install NGINX on our private EC2 instance. See you in the next one. Okay, so we have now our private, public, and instances and our Bastion host. We're able to actually get into our private instance, which yay, we're into it. But now what do I need to do? We need to install NGINX onto it. Okay, and remember, NGINX is just a server. So it's like if you made an API, you hit an endpoint and you see your content. We hit the NGINX endpoint and we get a welcome to NGINX page. Okay, lots of fancy, cool stuff you can do with it, but for our purposes, that's all we're really caring about. All right. So how did we install it on our public EC2 instance? Well, we went ahead and did sudo yum install nginx. So let's give that a try. And you can see it's thinking, which is interesting because if you remember when we installed it on our public instance, it was real quick. So what's going on that it's loading over and over? Well, let's think it through. We are on our private instance within our private subnet within our private VPC. Okay? There is no way for the internet, someone from outside of our VPC, to get into that private subnet. There's also no way for us from within our private subnet to get out to the internet. And when we say sudo yum install nginx, that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to get out to the internet to download and install nginx. And we can't do that. Well, we can't do that right now, but we can do that using a NAT gateway. So let's go ahead and go back to our VPC. And we're going to go to NAT gateways. All right, you can see we don't have anything there. Let's go ahead and create one. All right, so we're going to say DIP, deploy in public, and then we're going to say NAT gateway. We're going to select a subnet. Now, it's counterintuitive, a little bit, but we're going to attach it to our, we're going to create the NAT gateway inside of our public subnet, right? Because our private subnet stays locked down, but we can put it in the public subnet. All right. And then what we can do, and see if you look at the description too, a highly available managed network access or address translation service that instances and private subnets can use to connect to services and other VPCs, on-premise networks, or the internet. So we want the third of those, the internet. All right. And so basically what we are going to be doing is we're going to go through this NAT gateway, our little doorway, to connect to the internet in order to get NGINX. Okay. So we will leave the connectivity type as public, and we do need to allocate an elastic IP address. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to say create. All right. Next, we are going to, what are we going to do next? Next, we are going to create a private route table. So let me filter by VPC. So we have two route tables right now. We have our default that just allows local traffic all around. We have a public that allows us to connect to the internet gateway. And now we are going to do deploy in public private route table. We want that to be within the deploy in public VPC, and then we can create the route table. The next thing we have to do is we have to associate it with a subnet. So we are going to associate it with a private subnet. So this is going to allow us like a little route, a path, okay, from our private subnet. So right now we have our local route. From our private subnet, we can communicate with anything else within our VPC. We're going to click on edit routes. We're going to add a route. We want to be able to do all traffic, and then we want to go to the target. Our target is going to be our NAT gateway. So now what we're saying is from our private subnet, okay, we're able to, we have a route to that NAT gateway, which allows us to talk to the internet, okay? So let's see if that did anything. All right, we're still thinking here. All right, let's try again. This does not look great. All right, so what is going on, all right, that we cannot reach out to our internet? All right, we have to figure that out. All right, so we're going to go back to our EC2. And we're going to go to our instance. And I'm going to look at my private instance. I'm going to go to my security group. All right, so I'm actually not super sure. Maybe I just needed to wait a second. Let's see what's going on. Oh, there we go. All right, I just needed to wait a second. I think it takes a second for the NAT gateway to get set up. I was going to say, I was like, I'm pretty sure we did everything we're supposed to do. All right, so yes, we can download all of those. But now you can see that now we have that NAT gateway and we have that route. We are able to use the NAT gateway to connect to the internet to download NGINX, okay? So then we can go ahead and start NGINX by doing sudo systemctl NGINX start. Nope. And it's the opposite way. All right, so now NGINX is started. So if you remember from when we set up our public instance, the first thing that we want to do is we want to say curl localhost. And when we locally talk to ourselves, you can see that we see the home page. So curling localhost is just like if I were on my computer and I opened up my application in the browser and I said localhost at port 80, and then I loaded the application that I was working on locally. This is the exact same thing. We started running NGINX, and then we went and into our little browser, our virtual browser, and we pinged our local host, which then returned a response of that HTML page. Okay, so yay us, that's awesome. Now we want to see if we can ping it from a separate instance, right? Because ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to set up the public EC2 instance as a load balancer, that's what users would use to then redirect to our private instance. So I'm going to open up a new tab in my terminal. I'm going to go to EC2. I'm going to go to my instances, and I'm going to go to my public EC2 instance. I'm going to do my connect and then grab that command. All right, and paste it in. All right, and then I'm going to say curl, and I'm going to go back to my private instance to get my private IP address, and then I'm going to hit that private IP address. And it's not great. Nothing's happening. So then let me add a port, because maybe that's it. So NGINX runs on 80. And honestly, that's not helping either. Let me go back. Is this still working? What's going on? Did NGINX stop running? And it did not. All right. So we have another security rule that we need to set up. Okay, so let's go back and look at our private instance, which I already had it open, and then go to the security rules. You can see that inbound, the only security rule that we have for inbound is that we can SSH from that bastion host. So what we need to do now is we need to add an inbound rule that says that we can accept TCP traffic. And we want to accept it from port 80. From the maybe we don't want. All right, so I just didn't scroll down enough. So let's go to custom TCP on port 80, and then we want to scroll down. And we want to, let's select this public security group here and save it and see if that does it for us. And it does. Okay. So what we did is we added that we want to be able to have this public security group. We want to be able to, from our public instance, communicate to our private instance. All right. So now we are allowing the bastion host and the public EC2 instance to talk to the private instance. So that is pretty cool. Okay. So now when I do that, I can go ahead and see the NGINX homepage. All right. We're still not quite done yet, but we are really getting close. In the next video, I'm going to show you how we can edit what page is popping up, and then how we can, we'll also go over how we can redirect the traffic from the public to the private. And that will be our first deployed application. All right. See you in the next video. So now that we have access to our private instance and we're able to download and install things on the instance, we have an application, and that's pretty cool. But it's just the NGINX homepage, and that's less cool. How would we know for sure that we get the public EC2 instance forwarding traffic to the private EC2 instance if both instances are just running NGINX and both just show the welcome homepage? So what we're going to do in this video is we are going to change the page that we see when we hit the private endpoint. We're going to see our own message instead of seeing the NGINX homepage message. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to get back into our instance. So you can see right here, I'm just on my MacBook Pro, okay? And I need to SSH into my private instance. But as we know, we can't just SSH into a private instance. We have to go through our bastion host. So we're going to click connect here, and then we're going to go ahead and copy this key. And I'm actually, instead of copying the whole command because we're not using this, I'm going to just copy the IP address here, and then I'm going to do SSH dash capital A, and then I'm going to paste in my bastion host name. All right, so now I'm in the bastion host, which is exciting. So now I'm going to go back to my instances. I'm going to my private EC2 instance, and then I'm going to go to connect, and I'm going to copy my private instance, and I'm going to say SSH, and then I'm going to SSH into it. And yay, now I'm in my private instance. So if I do curl local host, you're to see that I get this welcome NGINX homepage. But I don't want to say welcome to NGINX because once again, the end goal of this assignment is to be able to hit the public endpoint and see what's going on in the private. Okay, and if I'm hitting the public endpoint right now, I just see welcome to NGINX. So once I forward the traffic and see welcome to NGINX, I'm not really going to know the difference. Okay, so to do this, we need to go and edit this file. Okay, like anything, when you're running an application, it's in the cloud or on your computer, it's just running a series of files with things right in those files. Okay, so this file here is just being returned when you hit that endpoint. We just need to find where that file is, and then we can edit it. Okay. So Nginx pretty much always puts it at user/share/nginx/html and then the index file. So that's where we're gonna look. So first thing that you can do is ls. You're not really gonna see anything. I wonder if you do sudo ls if you'll see everything. No. So I'm gonna clear. I know that user is going to be a folder. And it's not. Okay, so, oh, I'm saying ls user. That makes no sense. I'm going to cd into user, cd into /user. There we go. All right, that took me a while. So now if I ls, I can see the folders that are in there. Okay, so I'm looking for share, and share is a folder right here. So now I can say cd share, and I'm in share. And then I can ls, and I can see all the folders that are within share, and I'm looking for Nginx, which is right here. So now I can say cd Nginx, ls, and I see that I have modules and HTML. I'm going to cd into the HTML one, and then if I do ls, you can see I have the 404 HTML page, which gets loaded if something's not found. I have other things, and I have this one that's going to be index.html, and that's the one that we're going to use because that's what automatically gets loaded when we hit the server. So how do I edit it? Okay, so if I go ahead and just say nano, you could say nano or vim, nano index.html. It's going to open it, but you can see that it's unwritable. That means that I don't have the right permissions to edit it. So what I need to do instead is I need to say sudo nano index.html. And now I can actually edit this file, which is pretty cool. So instead of the title of the page being welcome to Nginx, I'm going to say yay. I'll keep the styling, that's fine. Instead of the heading on the page, I'm going to say I did it. And then for this paragraph, I'm going to delete all of this and write my own little paragraph. Also, you just need to change like one little thing. I just want to make it say what I want to make it say. So instead, I'm going to say, if you see this page, you successfully completed the first challenge in the Deploy in Public workshop. And then maybe in this one, I'll say something like, I might just actually get rid of this whole thing. Just deleting. Not much to talk about while deleting. I could probably find a good shortcut for navigating with Nano through files, which would be a great thing to do, find these shortcuts. Also would be a great thing to talk about when making your post about this assignment. But anywho, all right, so if you see this page, and then I'm going to say congrats. I think I'm going to change this to you did it, which is silly because I'm the one doing it, but whatevs. All right, and then in order to get out of this and save it, I'm going to do Control C. Nope, I'm not. I'm going to do Control X, and then it's going to say, do you want to save it? And then I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to write the name to index.html. Okay. So then now what I can do is I can say curl local host. And now you can see that the page that comes back is the page, still the same file, that index.html file, but instead of coming back with the NGINX homepage, it comes back with the HTML that I just wrote. Okay. So this is exciting, and this is almost the last step. But now if you look, we're not quite there yet, because if I go to my public EC2 instance and I get my public IP address and I go ahead and paste it in, I still get the welcome to NGINX homepage because we haven't set up the reverse proxy yet to redirect us from this NGINX homepage to our private instance, okay? So in the next video, that's what we're going to do. All right, now that we have changed our homepage on our private EC2 instance, we're going to open up a new tab on our terminal, and we are going to connect to our public EC2 instance. All right, and this is going to be our load balancer. All right, so the idea of the load balancer is that it's going to redirect traffic to my private EC2 instances that are running my applications. In this case, we have one load balancer redirecting traffic to one EC2 instance running an application. But as you scale, if you wanted to use this pattern, you could use multiple private EC2 instances running your applications, and then you could use the public EC2 instance to balance the load between those private ones. All right. There's also other ways to do this. There's actual load balancers in AWS that we might use later on in this workshop, but for now we're just going to use an EC2 instance so we can kind of demonstrate the concepts of how public versus private, reverse proxy, all of these things work. Okay. So we're going to say SSH, and then we're going to SSH into our public EC2 instance. So if I do curl local host, I should see, and I do the NGINX homepage. All right. So what I want to do is I want to CD into the etc file, and then I'm going to ls, and you can see these are all of the files that are in that folder. Then I'm going to cd into the NGINX file. Also, for clarity, I'm looking at a file path that I'm copying right now from a resource that I will link in this lesson. So I have not memorized where the configuration file for the NGINX server is. I'm just following documentation. All right, then I'm going to cd into well, now we're actually there, I think. So now these are all of the files within it, and then we are going to edit this nginx.conf. All right, so we are going to do let's try nano first, just to see if it says we can't edit it, which probably not. And yet, files unwritable, so we're going to get out of it. We're going to use sudo to use it as the root user. All right, and now we're in it. So all of this is the different configuration that is just by default set up for us. All right, so here's server. It's listening on port 80, and it's serving, right here's that file that we just changed, user share nginx HTML. So it's going to this directory, and it's looking for the index.html page, and it's serving it. All right. So you can see then here, like if it's a 404 error, what does it get served? Other errors, what gets served? All right. So what we need to do is we need to add a location block, and we need to go ahead and add something called, one of the properties will be called proxy pass, and that will let us redirect the traffic. So we're to say location. And then we are going to indent a little bit. And then we're going to say proxy underscore pass. Okay. And then at first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it wrong because I want to show you what some of the how to read error messages and stuff like this. And I'm showing you how to do it wrong because this is a mistake that I made last week when I was studying to show you guys how to do this. So I'm going to go to my private instance because what I'm saying I'm going to tell it to do is I want to tell it that I want to pass the traffic to this IP address. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save the file by doing Control X and then yes, and then enter. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to say sudo systemctl restart nginx. All right, and now you're to see the error, okay? So it says that it failed with exited with an error code, all right? And then it says that we can use this command here, systemctl status nginx.service in order to learn more. So that's what we're going to go. And now you can see that here is what it was trying to do. All right, so it's saying that we have an error, invalid number of arguments in location directive in etc nginx, nginx.conf at line 46. Okay, so this tells us that we know exactly where the error is. It is in line 46 of our configuration file. So if we go and look, it's going to be the line that we just added, but you could actually count all of these lines, and I'm sure there is a beautiful, nice way to correct it, to scan and search by line that I don't know. Please let me know if you find it. So what it's mad at is that we don't have the HTTP here, and it's mad that we don't have the semicolon. So let's start with the semicolon and leave the HTTP out and see if it gives us a better error when it. But see how it says that invalid number of arguments? So it's basically saying that it didn't know when this line was ending. All right, so now that we saved that, let's go ahead and restart it again. You can see that we get that same message. So let's go ahead and do the service systemctl status for that. And you can see that it exited invalid number of arguments at 40, failed to start, test failed. Okay. Well, I was hoping for a better error message, but that's okay. Let's see if we can get there ourselves. All right, we're going to add now an HTTP : // and then we're also going to add I'm not going to add a port, and I'm going to see how it goes. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead with sudo systemctl restart nginx, and we get another error message. So let's read and see what's going on. Starting, invalid number of arguments in location directive. All right. So then what I'm going to do now, because I keep getting this, so clearly what I'm doing is not fixing it. And see, I'm glad I showed this to you guys, because we can debug it together. All right, so let's try to figure out if we can find the issue. All right, so theirs is at line 35. These are all the different things that they've tried. So maybe I just need a slash. Let's see. All right, so now it makes me kind of want to actually count the lines, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. I'm seeing that we might need a slash. So we're going to say at this location, do that, redirect to this. All right, let's go ahead and see if that worked. Oh, and it did work. Okay, so that was what it was. It was the slash, and I'm guessing two. All right, so let's count to see if that was line 42. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42. Well, that was confusing. All right. Anywho, it was that we didn't put this slash here. Maybe it does, line counting doesn't work how I think it works. But it gives you the good direction. So now let's get rid of this HTTP and let's see if it would still work. And this is a great way. Oh, and it won't, but let's see what the error message is. But this is a good way to kind of see like what's allowable, what's not. You don't want to just copy a tutorial that you find online. Make sure you really understand it by understanding like what exactly is making this work. Oh, was it line 47? Oh, it was line 46, and I only got to 42. That's why. I don't know what I'm thinking. Okay, so now we see that the invalid URL prefix. Okay, so that makes sense. Invalid URL prefix on line 47. Okay, so that makes sense. That's why. And then line 46 would be this one. So it was telling us exactly which line had the problem, and there's not very much on that line. So that actually gives you a lot of information for when you're debugging. All right, so I'm going to add the HTTP in, and then I'm going to get rid of the semicolon because that's another thing that last week I had an issue with. Let's see what the error message says there. Unexpected. Okay, so it's saying in line 48, it has an unexpected closing curly brace, which makes sense that it's because we're missing a semicolon. Okay, so see how you can, I don't really know how this whole file works. I don't know all of the ins and outs, but I'm able to learn by kind of testing out different theories, reading error messages, doing some Stack Overflowing. And if you had AI out, you could also ask AI, and I'm sure AI would know. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do systemctl restart NGINX. So when we do curl localhost, we see you did it. If you see this page, you successfully completed the first challenge in the Deploy in Public workshop. Congrats. All right. So now the final test is if we can see it when we hit the public IP address. And when we hit it, what do we see? I opened it like that, but I don't know if that's how I want to open it. I'm just going to copy and paste the IP address. Of course. And okay. All right, I had to reload it because it had cached it, I'm thinking. But it says you did it. If you see this page, you successfully completed the first challenge in the Deploy in Public workshop. Congrats. Awesome. All right, so pat yourselves on the back. If you made it this far and you're seeing what I'm seeing, you too have done it. And I will post the next assignment and solution video soon. Good job. All right, quick note. When you are using AWS, it does cost money. So if you are not using your instances, it's good to not have them running. So first I'm going to show you how to kind of pause them. So you can go to instance state and then stop instance. All right. And you're not charged fees for it. But for example, the IP address that you have with it, you are charged for it. Make sure you're just reading up on AWS, and you can click stop, and then it'll stop them, and then you will be able to restart them afterwards. Okay. Once you stop them, obviously this won't work anymore because you can't use an instance that's not running. It's like turning your computer off and then trying to access files on it. You cannot do it. Okay. So you can also, if you are done with the assignment and you're not going to use these anymore, you can also click terminate these instances and then terminate them. Okay. In order to kind of clear out everything else, you'll need to just go through and undo everything that you did. Okay, so this says that we have one Elastic IP running, and I'm guessing that it is connected to, oh, it's connected to our NAT gateway. So this is a good thing to remind us. So let's go ahead and head over to our VPC. So when you delete your EC2 instances, right, our bastion host and our public one, those both had Elastic IPs. When we deleted the instance, it also deleted the IP address. But the NAT gateway has an IP address and we haven't deleted that. So let's go ahead and delete VPC, and we can't because you'll see that we have all of these things that are being used in our NAT gateway and another network interface. All right, so I'm then going to go to my NAT gateway, and I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to delete NAT gateway and confirm by clicking delete. All right, so now that is deleting. Let's go see what this one is. That's associated with the NAT gateway. So I'm assuming once our NAT gateway deletes, then it will, but we'll go ahead and check that. Let's go to our internet gateway and let's go ahead and delete that. Oh, I didn't want to detach it. I wanted to delete it, but maybe you have to detach before you delete. Oh, it's because it has mapped public IP addresses that need to be deleted first. All right, so we'll have to go find those. Let's check if our NAT gateway deleted, and it did. So let's go ahead and go to our Elastic IPs and refresh. That's still there, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it just in case that is attached. So let's release the IP address. Can't be released because it is associated with things. So this is why it's important to go through all of this, because it's not always clear what how it's not always easy to just be like, oh, I want to delete everything. So this NAT gateway should be deleted. Maybe it just needs some time before. All right, so let's go to our route tables and let's delete the public and private routes and delete. And they have associations that cannot be deleted. So we'll have to delete our associations first. Action, edit subnet associations. Let's get rid of that association and save. So then now we should be able to delete it. And we can. Then let's go ahead and edit this route table. We're going to want to edit subnet associations, get rid of it, and then we should be able to delete. Perfect. Then let's go to our subnets. I'm going to select the subnets that we created and I'm going to delete them. All right, then I'm going to go to my internet gateway and let's see if I can actions detach from VPC. All right, and then delete. All right, now let's go to our VPC. Let's see if we can delete the VPC yet or if something is still attached. And it looks like no. Looks like these security groups will also be detached or deleted, which I'm guessing are the security groups that we made for those instances. Elastic IP. See if we can release this yet. And we can, because that NAT gateway must have gone away. All right, and so we should now have, yep, and we only have, let's see, route table, VPC, no matching. Curious if that route table will go away. I'm gonna come back and check on it. Well, I can delete it because it's not doing anything. Oh wait, did I delete the VPC yet? Yeah, okay, so let's go to the route table. Let's get the one that's associated with the not found receipt one, and let's delete it. All right, I think it's because the VPC is just going to need longer. So I'll check back, but yeah, moral of the story is make sure you go through and delete everything that you created so you're not charged any money. All right, I'll see you soon.